Hello. I'm changing direction because I realised you were looking at all my packing boxes behind and it didn't actually look that pretty at all. So I am coming to you live from the other direction. And I'm coming to talk about something that often gets misconstrued and very there is a lot of agenda distortion and confusion in the collective around the spiritual war. And I am here to give you a different perspective, whether or not that aligns with your current truth. But what I believe from my heart and source connection is that it is in reflection with a more higher universal truth. And it may be challenging for some people to hear and receive this. But good morning, my beautiful, beautiful people here. It's so beautiful to be here sharing this. Basically, this information came up as something to just quickly jump on and share with you because I have one of my partners who's my IT he helps me with all the technical difficulties I have. So he helps me with my website and posting and just showing me how to do life on social media. And he has asked me a question around, because he hasn't actually heard me do any of the conduit transcribing of energy and frequency, which I don't use the word channeling, because channeling, when somebody's channeling a being, they are channeling one entity. And they are channeling one entity that usually has some form of distortion and agenda. So they'll give you a certain amount of truth, and the rest of it is either misled or actually not forthright in what is shared. So there are a lot of people doing channeling of individual beings, and there is an element to truth which resonates to the heart, and then it is actually infiltrated or influenced by whatever that being's agenda is. So this is why I wanted to share this, because there's so many people saying, I've just got this download and I just got this information, I just got this, and we're in a spiritual war, and it's light against dark and da-da-da-da-da. Never ever has that resonated to me. There's been some part that I'm like, yeah, I'm not sure, like the world, from a universal understanding, for me, everything is perfect. Everything is in divine timing, and whatever is required for evolution is taking place. So that has been my understanding. But when I hear these things, it's never sat right. It's never felt true or good. And so I'm going to read you some of my book, and I'm going to break it up, and I'm going to share what I've taken from this so that you can have a greater understanding of what this means and how it's very important to come into your own space of your heart and not your mind or your ego when you receive different informations, to make sure it is in alignment with truth and creator and source. So this is just mid-book, right? So there is a lot of information before this, and I'm going to try really hard to read it to you properly. It's not how my mind processes, so I have to sort of tap into a slightly different current and frequency to read it, which is kind of slower because I have to feel the vibration as I'm sharing it. So the question: the deliberate conditioning of society to continue a separate mind, who is that done by? The human collective is currently in a cycle of intentional manipulation. The mind is being trained to step away from source in this separate thinking. More emotion is created within the individual's body. The emotion is what keeps humanity in confusion, redirected away from truth. The true mind is always there to come back into. But because humans have grown in their physical experience to live so far away from the feeling of source, they cannot even recognize when this segregation within themselves is taking place. As we have spoken about before, the individual mind, as it realized individual thought in the beginning of Earth, so this is a precursor. Basically, humans were the human experiment, or the original plan for humanity was that we come and live here on heaven and earth. So this is where scriptures really it has so much truth in it. So we were designed to live here as humans in peace and unity consciousness. But there was basically a fuck up in our creation, where because we were born into the physical density of separation, where we have physical form and everything is separate, our minds actually developed individualized thought, which is the separate mind or ego. So as each mind realized individual thought as a separate identity and a separate entity from Source Creator, was the creation of individualized thinking and polarity. What we haven't shared is that when this took place, and over years and lifetimes to come in your history, certain beings on Earth have come to understand this about the human condition. The human condition, being so divided from truth, makes the people easily controlled. These beings, and I'm going to touch on that piece, right? So because we are so easily controlled and our mind runs its own crazy stories, we don't realize when we've separated from truth. So that is why I've got my hand on my heart, right? Because I know that truth sits here. Truth sits, my being and my connection to Creator and Source sits in my heart. So for me, I walk around in my life a lot with my hand on my heart. Because that's right, this is truth. And my mind can get distracted by every other distraction of life in my head. And it pulls me away from my center. These beings that are encouraging separate thought have a purpose for their own individual orientation for what they would like to create on this earth. These beings are not of evil, but are actually very high vibrational in nature. Their frequency is powerful, becoming more powerful through the division of human mind. We know this is a challenging concept for you to recognize because you have associated things on this planet with dark, low frequencies. What we are sharing is that these beings whom are not human, but do live upon your planet, with you are trying to create a new way for Earth. There are beings for both unified and separate mind targets with the collective consciousness. So as you can imagine, I'm like my own realizations of truth and all these different perspectives that I've traveled with my own life. So many things I've journeyed within my own life. Having this information downloaded for me has actually just like completely helped solidify what was truth and what has come from my own egoic thinking. And it's kind of mind-blowing at times because it's for my personal journey, coming into that much unification within myself, it's finding a new way to embody and walk truth in my life, which is a whole new way of being. All right, so the next question to help add some more clarity to that. What is the purpose of these beings keeping the earth and its consciousness in a space of separation? The purpose of these higher beings is to continue their experiment on humanity as humanity came into the recognition of individualized thinking. These beings saw an opportunity to learn about the separate mind. These beings work in unification with their own race as one. The more information they can learn about the physical 3D representation of Creator, the closer they become to changing their own consciousness without damaging their people. Then there are other beings and races that are also very high frequency that have decided to help humanity come out of this experiment. The reasons for beings like us to help this shift is because our consciousness is that of unified universal consciousness, which means we are witnessing the human suffering. And that has an energetic ripple effect on our people. The difference in perspectives of higher beings are because these other beings, which we will now call, now this was a challenging part for me to transcribe, Gamaya, which I Google searched and tried to understand because I was really, really finding it super duper difficult to actually translate that. But this is what they want to call themselves. This is what the energy and frequency is calling it. And they're not using words like reptilians or greys. And the reason for that is because we've already got a belief and a judgment on those beings. So they're not using words that we have already pre-decided what they mean, and we've already got a energetic vibration towards those words. That's why it's interesting to read, because it's coming from a higher perspective. But Gamaya, which is Gamaya, means cooperation, which is combined in one body. So have only unified consciousness of their people and not yet developed their own consciousness to universal mind. Question. So I'm clearly understanding what you're saying. The Gamaya people or race are intentionally programming human consciousness to study the separate mind, to gain information for strengthening their own unity consciousness. Yes, this interpretation of your receiving is correct. We can feel your confusion as to why we have not made this bad. Your mind is trying to stay open, but also seeking to accept what we are sharing. The reason we don't see the human condition as good or bad is because we are aware that true mind can only be separate for a period before the being loops back into unity. So I'm going to speak on that. So you're going to start to see that I've actually the only what do you call that? Symbolism that I resonate to is the infinity loop. And I wondered why symbolism is not a thing for me. And I'm like, just the infinity loop has become such a big thing for me. And now what I'm understanding is because the center of the infinity loop represents source connection. And what happens is we figure eight out. So we come into earth in connection with God, and then we separate out and we do the loop, and then we come back into connection. And everything in the entire universe is based on this symbology. And it's super amazing. So what they're saying here is the mind can only be separate for so long before it has to come back in on itself. which means that it's not, and if you look at your own personal journey, there's only so long you can stay in a space of separation from your heart before it becomes too painful that you have to come back into yourself. So if you think of like the dark night of the soul as being the big separation loop part, then that is as far as you can go out from your connection because it's too fucking painful. All right, come back. This is because everything within the universe is built on the concept of separation and union. The infinity loop, I'm telling you about it before I read it, which we have given to you as a symbolization of this, shows the center point as oneness. And as the mind spreads out in individualized thought, it becomes further away until it comes back in on itself. Everything within Creator's creation is built upon this understanding. This symbol guarantees the perfection of the universal plans. The loop itself cannot be broken, which means that eventually oneness is imminent. That means that the human collective consciousness as an overall can only stay in separate mind for so long before it eventually comes back into its center of unification. This infinity loop, if you can start to grasp as the mind and all of its programs, will ensure you that you will always move through separateness and unification. The thing to truly feel resonance of in this understanding is the time one or a group is willing to stay disconnected from source. So, I hope your mind was as boggled as mine. No, because I think when you feel that, the idea of this book is that when you read the words, it activates your remembering. So you're remembering what's truth, and you start to feel it, and you start to feel the connection to source, and you start to activate your DNA, and you start to purge away the things that are untruths, whether that's your belief systems, your traumas, your basically your separate mind or ego mind, and come back, bring that separate mind gap more and more into the center of truth. So I'm not going to read anymore because I'm sure that's enough for you to digest, because I know sometimes when I've been doing this and I've been asking questions, and even at my space of awareness, which the whole reason that I can receive this information is because I've worked so much on letting go of my humanness, and I've let go so much of actually dissolving those blockages and beliefs, which is why so what's happening is when I am connecting into these frequencies and vibrations, this prefrontal cortex of where I normally have my information and decision making and all of these different things is basically shut off into a place of, like, I can physically feel it almost like blocking out it like blocks out this whole part of where I'm starting to perceive that my separate mind sort of comes over here. And I'm started to notice that within myself, that it's more, the thought comes from here, which is interesting because when I started to get downloads from Creator, they came from this side. And I never even thought to go, well, where does my false beliefs come from? Separation. But, all of these things that I've like journeyed and started to understand about myself and humanity, and it's like solidifying the truth, and it's still, for me, I'm still finding it wow, which is amazing. because it's not only helping to activate me more and to come into more truth and more heart-centered connection and more of what Creator wants for every being in the universe, but it has that ripple effect. So as I do it for me, just by showing up for me and putting this into a creation and a piece of solidness in this reality, then it has that ripple effect on everyone, even if you guys weren't here. And there's so many questions. Like right here, there's questions that I can ask around starseeds and what that even means. And I'm sure the answers are not what we think they are, because every question that I've asked has been so much higher in mind than what we perceive. But I have a client very soon, so I'm going to scroll quickly back and see if there's any questions that I can actually answer. Thank you. I love my smile too, and I love your smile. Smile more. Good morning from Zimbabwe. The Alchemist. I'm not sure. I haven't actually read that. So for me, I've been clearly told for the last 18 months not to feed my mind with information of books, things like The Alchemist, books that I'm super interested in reading, and that I knew had an element or were talking about truth. And I've been directed by God not to seek outside of myself. And I believe now, I know now, that the true reason for that was so that I didn't fill my mind with information from other sources, so that when I've come through with this information, it's not come from other books or texts or scriptures or history. So my logical, historical, conscious understanding of life, I've read Look, I have Eckhart Tolle's. I have 2 of Eckhart Tolle's books, and I've only opened. I've got The New Earth. Haven't read it at all. It sits on my bookshelf, and the other one, The Power of Now. I've opened at different stages throughout my journey, and I've read a page, and that's it. So I don't read. So I can't even which is great, because I know in myself now that what I'm sharing is not recycled information. It's coming from somewhere else, something else. The Akashic Records, which are talked about in the book as well, which is a new concept of things as well. It's all very, very interesting. You wonder why you're always angry. Well, anger is an emotion of the separate mind. So the belief that's creating the anger, it's the thought that creates the anger. And the thought that creates the anger is actually a surface thought that hides the true emotion underneath that, which is usually guilt, shame, grief, to some level of feeling not enough, unloved, or abandoned. And so it's anger is not even close to the true root cause of the anger. So that's just a small piece on that. I'm not even going to go into how big that can be. So the book is actually the book I'm writing, and it's not written, so you can't get it yet. It's I'm only 10,000 words in, and I've been told 120. So we've got some writing to do, And I have been told to focus on that for the next 3 months and to not get distracted in worldly life, which is challenging because I still live in 3D human reality. So it's teaching me a lot of trust and surrender and discipline, a lot of discipline. Thank you. The individual one mind is stronger than all the universe. However, there's universe doesn't exist. I'm not sure I'm interpreting it properly, but I'm imagining what you're meaning is like the true unity mind is stronger than all of the universe. And whether or not the universe exists is a whole new question, right? Maybe the universe is a concept of our mind that we've created as a story. We like to create stories. So one of the other pieces of information that I've received is that I will be traveling to America sometime this year, probably towards the end of the year from what I feel with the timelines. I have no idea how that's going to take place because I'm not vaccinated. But I have come to, I've actually come to a place of peace about being vaccinated to share and to be of contribution to the collective. So if that's a part of my own coming to allowance of being in the system to break away the system, then I'm okay with that, which could change at any time. Well, you see, you can't, saying there is no God, maybe there is no God in the way that you've interpreted God. So what is your version of God? Is your version of God biblical sense? Because people that have been brainwashed by Christianity or Catholics or all the other ones, I can't think of it. Freemasons is one, isn't it? And all the religions, we'll just say that. All the religions have some God. Creator is God. It's just whatever stories and narratives and programs you have experienced in this lifetime to how you interpret the word God. So for me, I haven't had any religious conditioning. So the word God doesn't sting me. The word God I see as creator, as source. And in this book, I use all three terminologies, which is interesting because I'm not inclined to, use any. My client's going to be here in like 1 minute. Beautiful. I am actually going to download this and pop it on YouTube. So if you'd like to watch it again and re-listen to those pieces of language and word spoken, then make sure you go over to my YouTube, like and subscribe. There is going to be a lot more new content from Universal Truth, and I am grateful for you being here. I love you, and have an absolutely beautiful, centered day.